it doesn't matter who turns up at the door of the Homo Club. We should be able to work with you, and we should make it better. And we do so in very short amounts of time, which never ceases to fascinate me. Like within sort of 4 hours, you can suddenly have people who are really interested in school and really interested in the subject, and can finally manage to express themselves in some way or another. Essentially, we do this by teaching people in 4 different ways, okay? So people are either auditory learners, the visual learners, the practical learners, or the kinesthetic learners, okay? Which is why you've got an array of tools down the back. We don't always understand what's being said or what's being asked of us, or very commonplace terms, or words, or expressions, or ideas. So it doesn't really matter whether you're trying to answer some notes on the Sylvia Plath play, or Shakespeare, or do trigonometry. If you actually haven't understood the question, that's where the biggest difficulty is. But then on the other hand, auditory is a real bonus, because quite often we really like repetition of sounds. And there can be great comfort in repetition of sounds. So, for instance, if we do some work, we really like other people to read it back to us again at the end, and we really take it in and really grasp it. And one of the very simple ways you can do this is that if you use a computer and you type it out, you can have the computer read it back to you. So there's a great comfort in sound sometimes. Okay. The other thing about visual people is that you don't have to be able to see the images. They're images that you create in your head. So if you don't get the trigonometry problem, if you show it to me in a visual way, I'm 100 times more likely to get it. Okay? So everything that you try to do in a visual way. So you want to take the textbook and all of the writing in it and literally make it into one page and make it into a picture. So you can either do that by drawing out a diagram, by drawing out a mind map. In terms of history, if you want to draw out a timeline, and if you have images associated with particular times in history, I suddenly know what the 18th century looked like. I know what people wore. I know what sort of houses they lived in and what they ate. So suddenly the 18th century and the 19th century are very different to me because the houses were different and people's clothes were different. It's this whole visual idea, okay? And there's a huge amount of visual things on the internet in terms of pictures and also in terms of video. And then if you combine it, so if you do use something like YouTube, you have the visuals and you have the sound of someone else talking to you as well. And because it's on YouTube, it talks to you and talks to you and talks to you and talks to you. You can play it back as many times as you like until you finally get it, okay? The practical and the kinesthetic ones are slightly different. Practical people are the people who get new gizmos and never read the instructions. They just take it out of the box and they play with it. They're generally very good with computers. And one of the courses that we started especially in the Homo Club this year is actually doing computer programming, because computer programming is something that they just gravitate towards it. I actually had my first computer myself when I was 8. My parents put me in Commodore 64, and that's when I started doing my first computer programming code. There's something very odd in that dyslexics are actually better at learning computer languages than they are learning English. And I don't know why, for instance, okay? So you can teach a huge amount of skills in computer programming language because there's an awful lot of structure in writing computer code. So you can actually teach things like structure and time management. You can teach English because someone is writing an HTML web page suddenly, and it's suddenly a lot more interesting. And you can teach them to do mathematical problems by getting the computer to solve them for them. So there's a huge diverse of things that you can do with computer code. And that's one of the reasons why people are very good at it, who are practical. Kinesthetic people, this is one that people find very hard to understand. It's about feeling things in your body. So people who are kinesthetic sort of naturally don't like sitting still, okay? They're the people who are really dying to walk around the room at this point and to have our break and go out and stretch your legs, go to the bathroom, do things. But the other really big thing about kinesthetic people, apart from just learning things because you do them because you have like, you have a dance routine, or you play hopscotch, or you throw a ball around. There's a ball at the back of the room there for this as well. You're also very, very keyed into emotions. You're very keyed into how other people are feeling around you. And this is one of the things that we don't really talk about. And I suspect that a lot of boys with AS in particular are very kinesthetic. They really take on the emotions of the teacher and the class and the other students and how people are. And that's something that we don't really offload and get rid of at the end of the day. So you really absorb what's happening around you. And you become quite disconnected with yourself if you don't find something to do with it. Okay? We need to teach everything that we do in those 4 different ways. If you know that your child particularly leans towards being artistic, they're a very visual learner and they're very happy to do that. If they love watching DVDs and watching films, if they're a total chatterbox, they're an auditory learner. People who are chatterboxes are always auditory learners. They're people who talk lots. If they're the sort of person who always likes to deconstruct things and take them apart from a young age, they're very practical, so you can give them something practical to do. And if you find it very hard to actually get them to want to sit down at the desk to do work, well, do something else. They're very kinesthetic. They don't like sitting down. You don't have to sit down. It can be as simple as what I'm going to suggest to you during this session, which is that you take the pieces of paper at the back of the room and you glue tack them to the wall and you work on the wall. So you're not working at a desk, you're suddenly doing something different. I don't think that you should just do homework for the sake of doing homework. I don't feel that you should just sit down and do 10 of the same maths problem, or just write an essay on a history topic, or just do this, or just do that. I think you should be doing something at home that you actually find interesting, and that actually broadens your horizons and challenges you a bit. And as parents, you're in control of that. You're the ones who decide what happens with your kids, ultimately. Not the school, or the Department of Education, or the politicians, or the teachers, or anybody else. It's you that decides how you do things at home. So if you're given a topic at home, you have the control to make that interesting and do something better with it. We talked about the fact that the auditory processing is difficult. So if we don't understand something, there's no point just sort of reading the question out again. You have to think of another way to explain it, even if that means drawing a silly little picture on the side of the page. Okay? We said that the visuals were really big. So visuals and patterns. So really concentrate on patterns and things. So particularly patterns and colours, because that goes very nicely with visuals.